Scenes from the Coffee Break French Café, Lesson 4. Bonjour à tous et bienvenue à Scenes de Coffee Break French. Moi, c'est Marc.
Et moi, c'est Hélène.
Comment vas-tu, Hélène?
Ça va super, et toi?
Très bien et très content d'être encore une fois dans le studio avec toi pour enregistrer encore un épisode de Scenes from the Coffee Break Café. Alors, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé dans le dernier épisode?
Alors, dans notre épisode 3, c'était un jour assez pluvieux.
Oui.
Et donc, Jérôme, notre ami qui tient le petit bar de plage, la cabane, il a dû fermer parce qu'il était un petit peu inondé.
That's right, he had a flood in the beach bar.
Yeah, a bit unlucky that day. Et ensuite, on a eu des touristes allemands et néerlandais et quelques groupes de jeunes qui sont venus goûter les cocktails de Fifi.
Oui, et il en a créé un nouveau.
Oui, exactement, le balto.
Le balto.
Mais il n'a pas voulu donner les ingrédients.
No, it's a secret. Of course, it should always remain a secret. Okay, let us get straight into our next chapter. And of course, after we've heard the chapter, we'll talk about all of the interesting language contained therein.
Scenes from the Coffee Break French Café. Chapitre 4. Nos premiers clients ce matin ont été Jacques et Dominique. Ils nous ont aidés à sortir les tables et les chaises sur la terrasse et ils ont pris un café crème et un pain au raisin. Jacques, c'est notre boucher charcutier. Installé ici depuis toujours, en fait, puisqu'il a repris l'entreprise familiale quand ses parents ont pris leur retraite. Il raconte toujours des blagues et quand Dominique est là, c'est pire. Ils s'entendent comme deux larrons en foire. Dominique, c'est le boulanger-pâtissier qui est arrivé dans le village il y a déjà 10 ans. Ils sont un peu plus âgés que moi, la quarantaine, et je les considère plus comme amis que comme clients, en fait. Après avoir servi une jeune femme que je n'avais jamais vue auparavant, je suis revenu au bar et j'ai demandé gentiment à Jacques et Dominique de parler un peu moins fort. En fait, ils n'étaient pas du tout d'accord sur la 2e édition de Village sans âge, la nouvelle fête annuelle du village. Jacques pensait que ça ne servait à rien, alors que Dominique pensait que cela faisait beaucoup de pub aux commerçants et que cela mettait de l'animation. Chacun est resté sur ses positions et ils sont partis travailler sans avoir pu se mettre d'accord et sans se dire au revoir. Ces deux-là sont incorrigibles. Ils ne changeront jamais. Au moins, la femme discrète, qui avait passé tout son temps à lire, nous a remerciés en sortant et a souri quand Fifi lui a dit « Au revoir, à bientôt ».
Très très bien, ok, nous allons réécouter, enfin pas réécouter, mais relire le texte. Et Hélène, tu vas lire chaque phrase et ensuite nous allons en discuter.
Et puis, on va rencontrer de nouveaux personnages aussi, je crois, dans ce chapitre.
Exactement. Vas-y.
Allez, c'est parti. Nos premiers clients ce matin ont été Jacques et Dominique.
So our first customers, nos premiers clients ce matin, ont été Jacques et Dominique. Have been, literally, Jacques and Dominique. So our first customers this morning were Jacques and Dominique. Hélène, why do we see the perfect tense there, le passé composé?
Yeah, that's the perfect tense here, but we could also have used the imperfect. It would have been perfectly clear here to say nos premiers clients ce matin étaient Jacques et Dominique.
Okay, let's continue on.
Ils nous ont aidés à sortir les tables et les chaises sur la terrasse et ils ont pris un café crème et un pain au raisin.
Mon préféré. J'adore les pains au raisin.
Ça donne faim.
Oui. So, ils nous ont aidés. They helped us. And note, if you're reading this, you'll see an S on the end of aider because that is our preceding direct object there with the nous. They helped us. À sortir les tables, to take out the tables, et les chaises, and the chairs, sur la terrasse, onto the terrace, onto the balcony. Well, not really the balcony, the kind of pavement area. Et ils ont pris un café crème et un pain au raisin. And they had a white coffee, a coffee with milk, et un pain au raisin and a raisin pastry.
Ouais, un pain au raisin, c'est usually like typical pastry, like croissant, pain au chocolat. We usually find them together.
Together, yeah.
In like boulangerie or in the café.
Tout à fait. One thing I wanted to mention there is the verb sortir. Normally we use sortir in the sense of to go out. Je suis sorti. I went out. Elle est sortie de la pièce. She went out of the room. But here we're using it in what we would call a transitive way. We're taking something out. So you can sortir les tables. You can take out the chairs and the tables. In this case, sortir les tables et les chaises. And when this happens, there's something interesting with our auxiliary verb, Hélène.
Then we will use the auxiliary verb avoir.
Oui, exactement. Donc, normalement, on dit je suis sorti, I went out. But when you take something out, it's j'ai sorti les tables et les chaises. I took out the chairs and the tables. Intéressant?
Ouais, super. Et ça veut plus dire to set up.
To set up, yeah, exactly. Okay, let's continue.
Jacques, c'est notre boucher charcutier installé ici depuis toujours en fait, puisqu'il a repris l'entreprise familiale quand ses parents ont pris leur retraite.
Okay, so quite a long sentence there. Jacques, c'est notre boucher charcutier. So he's our butcher and meat preparer.
Ouais. So yeah, actually, charcutier means pork butcher.
Yeah, so literally a butcher specifically involved in pork. But it's perhaps not really that specific.
Yeah, no, actually, it's just like the person who like treats all of the cold meat preparation. And actually, charcutier means chair cuite.
Ah, chair cuite. I did not know that. So la chair is flesh and cuite, cooked. So cooked flesh. So the butcher is involved in these kind of things. Okay, so Jacques, c'est notre boucher charcutier. So Jacques is our butcher. Installé ici depuis toujours, en fait. He has been here since forever, in fact. Puisqu'il a repris l'entreprise familiale quand ses parents ont pris leur retraite. Because he took up the family business when his parents retired. Prendre sa retraite, to retire, to take your retirement, literally.
Yeah, and here the sa turns into leur for their, because we're talking about the parents.
Of course, yeah.
And also the verb reprendre, to take over. So you see in here the verb prendre, to take, with the prefix re, and that's an again, so to take again.
Okay.
Il raconte toujours des blagues et quand Dominique est là, c'est pire.
So, il raconte toujours des blagues. He's always telling jokes. Et quand Dominique est là, and when Dominique is there, it's even worse. C'est pire.
And pire, worse, that's the opposite of mieux.
Oui, c'est ça. I wonder who Dominique is.
Yeah, we'll see if we hear about him soon.
Okay.
So our next sentence, ils s'entendent comme deux larrons en foire.
So whoever Dominique is, he and Jacques, ils s'entendent, they get on together, comme deux larrons en foire. Hélène, this is interesting.
Yeah, larron, that's someone who commits un larcin.
So someone who commits larceny, it's a thief.
Exactly, a petty thief.
Mm-hmm. Is that the normal word for thief?
No, we would usually use un voleur.
Un voleur, voler, the verb to steal, yeah? So what kind of word is larron then? Is it an older word?
Yeah, it's an older word that is really just used in that expression.
So what is what are deux larrons en foire?
I think that would translate as thick as thieves.
Yeah, so deux larrons, two thieves, en foire, literally at a fairground. The idea being that if there are lots of people at a fairground, pickpockets have had lots of opportunities. It's not a very positive image, but it's quite a common expression in French.
Yeah.
And just as in English, when we say, oh, they're thick as thieves, then you can say, ils s'entendent comme deux larrons en foire. Good.
Dominique, c'est le boulanger-pâtissier qui est arrivé dans le village il y a déjà 10 ans.
Okay, so here we have an explanation of who Dominique is. C'est le boulanger-pâtissier. He's the pastry chef qui est arrivé dans le village, who arrived in the village il y a déjà 10 ans. So already 10 years ago now.
Ouais, déjà. That's just to add a bit more to say like already. 10 years. Boulanger, that's the person who does the bread, the baker. And pâtissier would be more the cake maker.
Yeah.
But usually the boulanger is also doing the cakes.
Mm-hmm.
And do you know how many boulangeries there are in France?
I have no idea, but I've got a feeling that you're going to tell me.
Yeah. There's about 39,000 bakeries in France.
Wow. Well, I would enjoy going to every single one of them.
And there's about 34,000 communes or towns. So there's more bakeries than towns in France.
Lovely. Excellent. Okay. So we've got Dominique, the baker, the pastry chef, and Jacques, the butcher, and they get on like a house on fire. Let's find out a little more about them before we stop for a break.
Before we move on from that sentence, do you know anything interesting about the prénom Dominique?
Dominique. Well, I know that Dominique here is le boulanger pâtissier. It's not la boulangère pâtissière. So Dominique here is a male. However, when I was in France, when I lived in France, I had a friend called Dominique, and Dominique was a lady.
Yeah, that's a prénom mixte.
A mixed name. So we can have either a male or a female called Dominique. Okay.
Ils sont un peu plus âgés que moi, la quarantaine, et je les considère plus comme amis que comme clients en fait.
Okay, so they're a little older than me. Ils sont un peu plus âgés que moi, la quarantaine. So is our narrator here, Nico, saying he is 40 or they're around 40?
They are around 40. They are a bit older, la quarantaine. Et quarantaine, that's also the word we use for quarantine.
Yeah, a very interesting word as well.
Because historically it was a 40-day isolation period.
Mm-hmm. And this is all related to ships in Venice. The quarantena imposed on the ships as they arrived when people had to wait on the ships before boarding, before coming ashore for 40 days. And Nico les considère, he considers them plus comme amis que comme clients en fait. So he considers them more as friends than as customers.
Yeah, and the les refers to them, Jacques and Dominique. And how do you know if you pronounce plus or plus?
Well, in this case, it is a positive thing, so it's plus rather than ne plus, which is a negative thing, no longer. So if it were Nico ne les considère plus comme des amis, it would mean he no longer considers them as friends, but he very much considers them as friends.
Yeah. And just another thing I wanted to mention is âgé.
Mm-hmm.
We could also use vieux.
Vieux.
But it's a bit more pejorative to say ils sont plus vieux.
Yeah. So âgé is that kind of, they're older in the sense of they've got more life experience, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly. Âgé is a bit nicer.
A bit nicer, a bit euphemistic. Okay, we're going to pause there for just a moment and we'll be back very soon to continue with the rest of the text. In each episode of the Scenes from the Coffee Break Café podcast, you'll enjoy listening to the story and our discussion of keywords and phrases from each chapter. But what if you could explore the language even further and take your learning to the next level? That's where the Scenes online course comes in. For every chapter, you'll get comprehensive lesson notes, a video version of the reading, exercises, vocabulary, and even spotlight videos that help break down the key expressions and grammar points with additional examples. It's the perfect way to deepen your understanding and get even more from the story. To access this wealth of learning resources, visit coffeebreaklanguages.com/scenes. Alors aujourd'hui, nous avons rencontré Jacques et Dominique, notre boucher charcutier et notre boulanger-pâtissier.
Ouais, ils font beaucoup de choses tous les deux.
Ouais.
2 métiers chacun.
C'est ça.
Alors, après avoir servi une jeune femme que je n'avais jamais vue auparavant, je suis revenue au bar et j'ai demandé gentiment à Jacques et Dominique de parler un peu moins fort.
So it sounds like they're telling lots of jokes loudly, Dominique and Jacques. So let's go through this. Après avoir servi une jeune femme, after having served or after just serving a young lady que je n'avais jamais vue auparavant, that I'd never seen before or whom I'd never seen before. So that's next. We've got a j'avais vu, I had seen, which goes to je n'avais jamais vu, which I had never seen. So pluperfect tense. And of course, we've got an extra I on vu. Pourquoi, Hélène?
Because we've got our preceding direct object, une jeune femme.
Oui.
But if it was after, like je n'avais jamais vu cette jeune femme, then no agreement.
Exactement. Okay, so it comes before, in this case, une jeune femme que je n'avais jamais vue, extra I on the end. So after serving this young lady that I'd never seen before, je suis revenu au bar, I came back to the bar, et j'ai demandé gentiment à Jacques et Dominique, and I kindly asked Jacques and Dominique de parler un peu moins fort, to speak a little less loudly.
Yeah, fort, that can also mean strong.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll translate to loudly here for with parler fort.
Tout à fait. I've got a question about gentiment. Very often we see things happen when we create adverbs. And in this, the adjective form would be what?
Gentil.
So Gentil in the masculine form. And then you also have gentil, double L-E at the end.
Yeah, that's the feminine version.
Mm-hmm. But when we convert this into an adverb, we drop the L at the end of gentil, or indeed the LLE at the end of gentille, to get gentiment. So Gentiment. Hélène, can you think of any other adverbs that happen in a similar way or that change the sound in the middle?
So, for example, if we think of évident.
Yeah, so that's the word for obvious.
Yeah, it will turn into évidemment.
Yeah, so we're taking off the NT and it's keeping the E vowel of évid, but then we change the sound of it and it sounds like évidemment.
Like yeah, évidemment.
So obviously, évidemment, and it's very common. So that's évidemment. We were looking at gentiment, kindly. So he asked Jacques and Dominique to kindly speak a little less loudly.
Yeah. And with je suis revenu, we've got the verb revenir.
Mm-hmm.
And here we're using the auxiliary être because it contains venir, one of the verbs that we form with être for the perfect tense.
Tout à fait.
En fait, il n'était pas du tout d'accord sur la deuxième édition de Village sans âge, la nouvelle fête annuelle du village.
Okay, so this is quite interesting because we've got a special festival, a town fete, as it were, and it's called Village sans âge, so literally village without age.
Yeah, like maybe timeless village.
Ah, okay, right. So this is their festival, la fête, la nouvelle fête annuelle du village, en fait. So it's the new annual festival in the village. And it seems that Jacques and Dominique n'étaient pas du tout d'accord. They weren't at all in agreement sur la deuxième édition, about the second edition, the second year of running the Village sans âge festival.
Yeah, être d'accord, that's to agree, and here with the negation, pas du tout, so not at all.
Yeah, très bien.
Jacques pensait que ça ne servait à rien, alors que Dominique pensait que cela faisait beaucoup de pubs aux commerçants et que cela mettait de l'animation.
This is interesting here because we've got Jacques pensait que ça ne servait à rien, alors que Dominique pensait que cela faisait beaucoup de pubs and so on. So we've got ça and cela, and they're really interchangeable, aren't they?
Yeah, we could have said like cela ne servait à rien.
Mm-hmm.
And in both cases here, it refers to the fête village sans âge.
So that, referring back to this festival. Okay, so Jacques pensait, he thought, que ça ne servait à rien, that it wasn't worth anything, it was pointless perhaps. Alors que, whereas, Dominique pensait que cela faisait beaucoup de pubs aux commerçants. He thought it was a really good opportunity for advertising for the merchants, the people who have the shop sellers, basically, the salespeople, et que cela mettait de l'animation. And it created, I don't know, a buzz, or it created activity in the village.
Okay, yeah. And faire de la pub, that's the short for publicité.
Oui.
So we could also say the full word here.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing to mention about pub is that we also see that word, P-U-B, sometimes when we're talking about a bar. And in that case, you don't call it un pub, but un
pub.
Un pub. So it's une pub, because it's une publicité, short for publicité. But when we're talking about a pub, it's un pub.
Yeah, but in French, we mostly say like it's un bar.
Un bar. Des fois, on voit un pub,
ouais.
Mais c'est plutôt un pub irlandais ou quoi que ce soit. OK.
Alors, chacun est resté sur ses positions et ils sont partis travailler sans avoir pu se mettre d'accord et sans se dire au revoir.
Oh dear, well, they were thick as thieves, but now they seem to be, I don't know, in the huff with each other or something like that. Chacun est resté sur ses positions. So each one of them literally stayed on his positions, meaning they weren't budging, they weren't moving from their opinion. Et ils sont partis travailler, and they went off to work sans avoir pu se mettre d'accord, without having been able to put themselves in agreement, to agree. Et sans se dire au revoir, and without saying goodbye to each other.
Yeah, se mettre d'accord, to reach an agreement, it's reflexive here, se mettre d'accord.
Très bien. OK.
Ces deux-là sont incorrigibles.
Those two are incorrigible. They are unbelievable.
Yeah, we could also say ces deux-ci would be those two there, or those two here.
Yeah, so we've got ces deux-là, when we're sort of talking about those two over there, that kind of idea, and ces deux-ci, those two here, or these two here, sont incorrigibles.
Yeah, so it depends a bit like if it's closer to us or a bit farther away.
Exactly. And it's funny because we say in English incorrigible, but in fact, in French, we can actually get a little more of the root of the word, because we've got corriger, which is the verb to correct. So if they're incorrigibles, they're uncorrectable, literally.
Yeah, never change.
They never change. You can't do anything to make them change. In fact,
Ils ne changeront jamais.
Ils ne changeront jamais. That is exactly the next sentence. They literally will never change. Ils ne changeront jamais.
Yeah, with our future here, the verb changer.
Mm-hmm.
Au moins, la femme discrète qui avait passé tout son temps à lire nous a remerciés en sortant et a souri quand Fifi lui a dit « au revoir, à bientôt.
Okay, so then this mystery lady who we've not really heard a lot about, au moins la femme discrète, the discreet woman, qui avait passé tout son temps à lire, who spent her entire time reading, nous a remerciés en sortant. She thanked us as she left, et a souri quand Fifi lui a dit, and she smiled when Fifi said to her, au revoir, à bientôt, goodbye, until the next time. So there we've got sortir in a gerund form, en sortant. But had we seen the lady left, it would have been.
That would just be elle est sortie.
So there we're seeing sortie, elle est sortie with the auxiliary verb être, in comparison to where earlier we were speaking about the idea of nous avons sorti les chaises et les tables, where we're seeing it with avoir. But in that case, the lady just left, elle est sortie.
Yeah. And for au moins, it's different here. It's at least. It's not the same as à moins que. That would be unless.
Yeah, so à moins que, plus a subjunctive there.
Plus a subjunctive.
Unless, but au moins, at least the discreet woman. And the other thing I liked here, qui avait passé tout son temps à lire. So you spend time doing something. In French, you have to spend time à plus infinitive. Passer du temps à faire quelque chose.
Ouais. Et elle nous a remerciés. Here we've got our direct object, nous.
Mm-hmm.
Remercier quelqu'un.
Ouais, remercier quelqu'un. So it's direct. There's no à quelqu'un or anything like that there. And which means, of course, that pronoun nous becomes our preceding direct object, meaning there is a lovely S on the end of remercier. Elle nous a remerciés. She thanked us. Lots in there, Hélène.
Long sentence.
Long sentence, and indeed lots in the whole text. And I really liked some interesting expressions like ils s'entendent comme deux larrons en foire.
Ouais.
Let's listen out for these as we hear the full text one more time.
Scenes from the Coffee Break French Café. Chapitre 4. Nos premiers clients ce matin ont été Jacques et Dominique. Ils nous ont aidés à sortir les tables et les chaises sur la terrasse et ils ont pris un café crème et un pain au raisin. Jacques, c'est notre boucher charcutier. Installé ici depuis toujours, en fait, puisqu'il a repris l'entreprise familiale quand ses parents ont pris leur retraite. Il raconte toujours des blagues et quand Dominique est là, c'est pire. Ils s'entendent comme deux larrons en foire. Dominique, c'est le boulanger-pâtissier qui est arrivé dans le village il y a déjà 10 ans. Ils sont un peu plus âgés que moi, la quarantaine, et je les considère plus comme amis que comme clients, en fait. Après avoir servi une jeune femme que je n'avais jamais vue auparavant, je suis revenu au bar et j'ai demandé gentiment à Jacques et Dominique de parler un peu moins fort. En fait, ils n'étaient pas du tout d'accord sur la 2e édition de Village sans âge, la nouvelle fête annuelle du village. Jacques pensait que ça ne servait à rien, alors que Dominique pensait que cela faisait beaucoup de pub aux commerçants et que cela mettait de l'animation. Chacun est resté sur ses positions et ils sont partis travailler sans avoir pu se mettre d'accord et sans se dire au revoir. Ces deux-là sont incorrigibles. Ils ne changeront jamais. Au moins, la femme discrète, qui avait passé tout son temps à lire, nous a remerciés en sortant et a souri quand Fifi lui a dit « Au revoir, à bientôt ».
Alors, c'est tout pour cet épisode. Of course, if you are using our bonus version, the full version of Scenes, then you can access all the additional materials like the video version of the text and also the lesson notes and the exercises and vocabulary that we provide. If you're not already using that, then head to coffeebreaklanguages.com/scenes to find out more.
And don't forget that you can also sign up for our free newsletter where we share lots of tips and tricks to help you build up your language skills. So you just have to go to coffeebreakfrench.com and sign up there.
Très bien. Alors, merci beaucoup, Hélène.
Merci, Marc.
Nous serons de retour avec le 5e chapitre très bientôt.
Ouais, j'ai hâte.
Allez, salut!
Salut!
You have been listening to a Coffee Break Languages production for the Radiolingua Network. Copyright 2025 Radiolingua Limited. Recording copyright 2025 Radiolingua Limited. All rights reserved.